Hi, I'm Tiffany, and this is Towering TBR. All right, it is the end of December. I am here to wrap up all of the books that I read or DNF'd in the month of December. I did DNF 5. I was in a weird mood this month, and a lot of things weren't working for me. So I have a lot of DNFs. And let's start with those. The first was Maps of Our Spectacular Bodies by Maddie Mortimer. I read this in my Irregular vlog and talked about the reasons why I decided to DNF it. But basically, this is an experimental novel following a woman who has cancer, and we also get a perspective from the cancer itself. And it was too experimental for me. The narrative wasn't gripping enough to stick with it, so I stopped. Of course, I'm quite in the minority. This is quite a popular book and it has won some awards. So, I mean, it was probably me, but this was one of the books I didn't finish this month. I also DNF'd The Shape of Sound by Fiona Murphy. This is a deaf memoir. Fiona is profoundly deaf in her left ear and has compensated with her right ear quite a lot. And she talks about getting hearing aids and how they really intensify her sensory experience with sound, and to the point that she doesn't like it. And that was interesting, but then she would go off on these kind of philosophical tangents, and it just felt very stream of consciousness, and that is just not a style I prefer. So when it was no longer interesting to me, I put it down. I think I DNF'd this at page 94. So, and then I picked up How to Take Over the World by Ryan North. This is a really fun book. It posits that if you're going to be a supervillain, like, you need a super secret bunker. And one of the lines literally made me laugh out loud. It said, there are some restrictions to keep in mind when scoping out locations for a secret base. The secret part of secret base means that it must be hidden or at the very least inaccessible, because you don't want meddling do-gooders easily stumbling across it. Base means it should be sustainable and self-sufficient, able to support you, and ideally a staff of hench people, for months if not years at a time. Remember, if you can't bunker down in it for the long term, you don't have a base. You have a vacation home. And one simply doesn't take over the world from a secret vacation home. And it's really cute. And they talk about, like, different, like, in the first one, it was about secret bases. And it talks about, like, floating on international waters and, like, sites, like, anecdotal sources of people doing some of these things. Living in the ocean to be away from laws and all sorts of interesting things. But it felt gimmicky. It felt more like a, dare I say, toilet book? Like a bathroom book? Like if you're bored for a little bit. Yeah, it just didn't sustain my interest in the long term. But it is kind of funny. So, yeah, maybe I'll give it another shot sometime, but probably not. Also in my Aurelium readathon, you will see that I picked up Men I Trust by Tommi Parish and also DNF'd that. And I didn't like the characters and I didn't like the art, so it made it pretty easy to DNF for. Oh yes, the other book I DNF'd was The Marriage Portrait by Maggie O'Farrell. I am not considering this like a real DNF in that I will never ever go back to it. But I was in completely the wrong mood for this kind of book. It's set in the 1500s, and a young bride is murdered. And yeah, so we open with a scene, and it's pretty intriguing. But then we go back to her childhood, and her parents talking about how she was this chore to raise, and how she was so different from all of her other siblings. And yeah, I don't know. It just sort of sounded like she was hard to raise, so she had it coming that her husband murders her. Like, I don't know. I just was not in the mood for it, and yeah, so I DNF'd that. So that is all 5. Good. Let me talk about a book I loved. I loved Lark Ascending by Silas House. This is a climate fiction change book following Lark, who I think is 20 in the book, 20 or 21. And it's his journey from the US to Ireland. In this climate change fiction book, 2 things have happened. Climate change has made it so that food is unsustainable and natural disasters are, specifically wildfires, are destroying arable land. And the other thing that's happened in this book is the fundies have taken control of the United States. And Lark is a gay character, but he cannot be open in this future because the fundies who have taken over have started sending homosexuals to like labor camps. And there was a really good quote about it, so I'm gonna find it. My father's sister and her wife had been taken away weeks ago. My aunts, who had fallen in love and gotten married long before the fundies had took over. Now my parents had learned we would never see them again because they loved each other. This was the beginning of the slaughters. The fundies were in control now, and they were the only kinds of believers who were allowed to believe, and anyone defied them, they disappeared like my aunts. And then in a later part of the book, an older woman is speaking to Lark, and she says, "It's strange. The strangest part is how quickly it all went backward. All during my youth, there were steps forward. The day that gay marriage was legalized, we danced in the streets of Cork. There were always bigots pushing against it, of course, but gains. Steps forward in my lifetime. I would have never believed. And then, now, here we are, moving backwards. History repeats itself. Turns out it's easy to convert more people to a cause that takes power from others, that thrives on meanness." And that just hit way too close to home. Like, this is a dystopian, and yet there are nods to what's going on in our world right now and how they could end in disaster. Not only if we don't take care of the resources we have, but also if we let extremists and their hate get in power and use that power to harm people. I also love the writing. It definitely helps that the narrator and Silas House himself have Southern accents. So that really helped get me in place. So I'll read you a section that I thought was really awesome. And the best part of this book, other than being a warning for climate change and extremism, is the importance of animals. Animals, especially pets, are outlawed in this post-apocalyptic world because there isn't enough food. And if there isn't enough food for humans, then they're not going to spend any food on an animal. So they're outlawed, and Lark has never seen one until now. I waited. I was so tired I could barely move, but somehow I thought if the dog might come near and put his wet nose into the palm of my hand, I would be re-energized. This one act would be enough to get me through, and so this is the first time he saved me. The dog had come forward, but now he hesitated, took one step back, his brown eyes locked onto my face, trying to read any sign that might be found there. "It's okay, buddy," I said, and I realized that even my lips were tired, even the muscles in my face. I felt slack-jawed, like weights had been attached to my pants legs and to the hem of my shirt. The rain was falling quiet and soft, like small feet stamping the leaves. But I knew that any minute the sky would open up. The sound of thunder was shifting closer and louder. "Please," I said to the dog. I did not want to be alone. And yeah, this book is beautifully written. These characters feel so real. He like soul bonds with this dog, and it is just, it's heartbreaking and amazing, and this is not going to be the only book I pick up by Silas House. He has written many others, and I enjoyed this so immensely that I definitely want to read some of the others. Yeah. I gave it 4 stars, but I still keep thinking about it, so that may get bumped up in the future. I also picked up a novella called Even Though I Knew the End by C.L. Polk. This is about a woman who very quickly needs to solve a murder. And it's in a supernatural type world where she has supernatural skills to help her solve this murder. And then she needs to find the murderer, the serial killer. And it's very high stakes. But because this is a novella, that's all I'm going to tell you. That's all I'm going to tell you. It's really good. It reminded me kind of a supernatural episode. Not a specific one, but just in that there are lots of supernatural people and creatures in the books that I just thought was really interesting, and I enjoyed it. I think I gave it 3.5 stars. And then I picked up this adorable graphic novel called My Aunt is a Monster by Reimena Lee. I looked it up. That's how you say it. Reimena Lee. And this is just adorable. So it kind of starts out sad. Safia is a blind kid, and her parents die in a house fire. And so she is given to the custody of her aunt that she has never known or met. And there are all these rumors that she is a monster. But Safia gets to know her and loves her, and they go on an adventure together. And it's just so sweet. I loved the disability representation. Although I would definitely check with Own Voices to see if they like the representation. But I thought it was really good. It was really cute. I thought that there was a scene that was really important where an adult apologized to the kid for wronging them. And I feel like you don't see that much. Adults apologizing to kids and taking responsibility. So I thought that was really refreshing as well. And it was just a fun adventure story, and I really liked it. And I think I gave it 4 stars. I will briefly go over the 2 that I read and finished in the Aurelian readathon. I picked up The Android's Dream by John Scalzi. I gave this 3 stars. It is a really wacky adventure story about a diplomatic incident setting off kind of ruffling some feathers between the humans and the aliens. And then it's a quest to kind of smooth over that diplomatic bump, and it goes in all sorts of directions that I wasn't expecting. It is not as well written, and the humor is much more lowbrow than in his other books, but I still enjoyed it. And if you want more thoughts, definitely go check out the blog, because I share in real time what my thoughts were, and it definitely had quite a few. The other book I finished in that readathon was The Murder of Roger Ackroyd by Agatha Christie. I found this okay. Unfortunately, I guessed the ending, and usually I feel smart when that happens, but I kind of felt like it made it less enjoyable that I figured out the ending. But yeah, it's the first Agatha Christie book that I've read that has Hercule Poirot as the main inspector, and I really don't like him. I don't think I'll pick up other books because he came off as a jerk, in my opinion. But yeah, a man called Roger Ackroyd is murdered, and the investigator gets involved and figures out the murder. So I don't want to say anything else, but it was fine. But I think I'm kind of done with Agatha Christie. I think my enjoyment of her is no longer where it used to be. So there are 2 more that I added at the very end. I didn't like ending on all these DNFs, so I kept trying. So I picked up The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandanna. I didn't like this. I gave it 2.5 stars maybe. I was told that this is magical, found family, and romance. And a lot of people compared it to The House in the Cerulean Sea, which I disagree with. I mean, there is somewhat of a found family and some children with magical powers. But I felt like she was constantly telling instead of showing. Like, literally the character would be like, my motivation for being scared of getting in a relationship is I've been hurt before. And it's like, can't you tell us, show us in a way that we know that that's how they feel because they've been abandoned before, rather than having the character say it? It was unbelievable in terms of dialogue. And it was also unbelievable in some other aspects, but they would be spoilers if I went into depth about them. But yeah, I liked the main character. She's sunshiny, and the guy she liked is a grump, and apparently that's a romance trope, but I didn't like him. I thought he was way too much of a grump, and I didn't like them together, honestly. So yeah, I gave it 2 stars. And lastly, I read Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmus. This was purported one of the best books of the year. Hilarious, laugh out loud funny, and I don't know who's saying those things, but no, it was not true. The one and only line, and I even wrote it down because I wanted to share it. The one and only line that I thought was even slightly funny in this book was, she is a scientist and a chemist, to be specific, and she gets ousted, and so she gets a job as a TV cook personality, and wants to incorporate science and chemistry into it. And the producer, who is her friend as well, gets hurt that she didn't read the cue cards that he wrote. And I put it down. The cue card he had written for this particular segment had been among his favorites. Isn't spinach a nice color? Green. It reminds me of springtime. She skipped right over it. And yeah, that is the only line that I even smirked at a little bit. The fact that he thought that was a good line and was upset. But yeah, this actually has a lot of serious topics. The reason she is ousted is because she's sexually assaulted, and yeah, and basically she's sexually assaulted by a boss, and he basically ousts her, and it just felt unrealistic. This book is set in the 1960s, and it's all about feminism and women power and that kind of thing. But it really felt like the character of Elizabeth Zott, that's the main character, that she was like a 2020s feminist, not a 1960s feminist. And it just felt like there were times she spoke out against men that, in my estimation, felt really unusual and unlikely. But yeah, it is not a funny book. It is a feminist historical fiction, I guess. I don't know. I gave it 3 stars because it was fine, but honestly, I felt bad for the character. A lot of bad things happen, and yeah. I kind of feel like the ending is super duper wish fulfillment and not at all realistic either. Yeah. But I loved her dog. Her dog's name is 630, and he was a really fun character. I liked him. So I think that totals up to 7. I think I finished 7 books in the month of December. What did you finish in the month of December, and what are you looking forward to reading next? Thank you so much for joining me. Let's have a chat down in the comments below. Bye.